So no symposium is a symposium unless we have a great panel discussion. And our first session after lunch is our panel discussion. And it's called Leading Your Community, talking about our voice, our truth. I think it's going to be a really great opportunity to hear from some great people. One of the things I also like about the opportunity for us to run a symposium and to invite speakers is the opportunity for people that don't always get the opportunity to speak at national forums. And some of those that sometimes I like to talk about them as being, our unsung heroes who are doing great things in their home communities and not necessarily having their voice heard outside of that. So I'm really pleased with the people who agreed to take up our invitation. The panel today is going to be facilitated by Professor Kerry Arabena. Kerry is the Managing Director of Arabena Consulting. She's a descendant of the Meriam people from the Torres Strait, and Kerry's work has brought her to the forefront of Indigenous affairs in Australia. I'm kind of sort of sitting here all of a sudden saying to myself, why do I read this? Because I know this woman very well, probably too well at times. But this is professional, so I won't tell the stories. We can leave that till a little bit later. So I'm really pleased that Kerry has agreed to facilitate this session for us. The other panel members, and I'll hand over to Kerry shortly, Rhonda Radley will be joining us. John Rowe, again another AILC alumni. And as John Paul told you all this morning, unfortunately Toby Adams was unwell and unable to come. And at the last minute, John Patterson, the Executive Officer for AMSET, stood in. I had a conversation with John yesterday and I said, have I got a deal for you? I think what's important about John saying, yep, no worries, I can do this, is that the AILC and AMSET signed a memorandum of understanding a couple of weeks ago, and that is about the two organisations working in partnership, the AILC providing opportunities for leadership development for the AMSET's member organisations. So it's one of the new partnerships that we have developed, and I'm really looking forward to what we're going to achieve in that space. And I know there's a lot of other organisations like yours under the NACHO network that also want to sign up agreements, and I think that's really important for not just the AILC and organisations like AMSET, but also for AIGI. So without any further ado, if I can please hand over to Professor Arabena.
Good afternoon, everyone. I keep on looking over at Glenda. I would like to acknowledge you, your beautiful family, and all your beautiful countrymen and women here from this wonderful part of this world. We have done some incredible journeying together, and a lot of my leadership qualities, I think, have been developed on your lands with your families and your communities. So I just want to really acknowledge the Ngunnawal peoples here and thank them so much for their stewardship and their leadership, but also their care for our Torres Strait Islander communities who also spent a lot of time here in your country. To all of you, thank you so much for making yourself available to come along to this incredible forum. There have been lots of rich and fulfilling discussions to be had. And just before we do start what is going to be a fantastic discussion this afternoon, I'd like to also acknowledge the Leadership Centre and the Governance Institute and thank them very much for putting on such an important conversation about our truth and our voice, and to be able to create spaces such as you have done, I think is also a testament of the strong leadership capabilities of people both within the organisation, but the way that you're really extending our capabilities through the courses and the strategies that you're implementing, both of the Institute and the Centre. We're very, very proud of you, and just keep staying strong. So for this afternoon's discussion, we're going to be really focusing on developing our leadership through utilising our voice and talking our truth. And for that, I've got three really wonderful speakers, some of who've been introduced, and I'm going to be very excited to have this as the structure for today's discussion. We're inviting each of the speakers up for about 5 to 7 minutes or so, just to give an overview of some of the work that they're doing, embedded deep into their own networks, their associations, within their organisations. And then we'll all come up here for a bit of a discussion afterwards and talk through some of the ideas around principles and some of the spaces that we operate in, but also really then to focus on some of the leadership styles and how you bring about, how you make investments that really do facilitate us being strong, our truth being heard and our voices being taken notice of. So our first speaker today is well introduced in the actual documents that we've got here, but I'd like to invite Rhonda Radley up to talk to us about the strong sister movement and the 5 essential qualities of leadership. So if you could please join me now in welcoming Rhonda.
Just like to start acknowledging that we're on another world land. And I was just sitting over there feeling very anxious and trying to do that deep breathing, you know, sort of get my heart rate pumping, you know, not too fast. I feel really very honoured to be here, and I didn't write any notes because I find if I talk from my heart, I don't get as nervous. And I always do feel a little bit anxious when I start telling a little bit about my story. And I feel that us as women, sometimes we don't really value that story. Now, I have a book here, and it was really hard to actually, you know, cut it down to just maybe a couple of paragraphs in 5 and 7 minutes. So I'm going to be showing a short video. But to introduce that video, I just have to talk about a time in 2013 that I came to Straight Talk, and this room just brings that back so many memories because the last Straight Talk program we were here, and it always makes me feel emotional because I always feel so blessed to be connected in that space with so many strong Aboriginal women. And I feel at this time, and it has been hard when you're fighting the fight, and you think, what are we leaving our young people? And when I looked around the room in those Straight Talk spaces, I just felt overwhelmed by the power of these young women. And I just, we always want to be hopeful, and in our heart we're, always in the darkest times, I said, there's always hope, there's always hope. And when I looked around that room, there were so many hopeful people, who I say, hopeful young people that were coming up because they believed in hope. And so I'm just going to say a little bit about Michelle Deschong. When 2013, when I did the first Straight Talk program, I was sort of wanted to be visible. I didn't want to be heard, and I didn't really value myself being in that space. And I didn't allow myself to have that sense of belonging or feel safe. But I watched Michelle Deschong, and boy, has she got a poker face. Look, I played poker with the aunties, and I say she's one of the best poker players that I've ever seen. And I feel, look, I'm a people watcher, and I watched her work the room. And there's 3 things I do want to touch on in my presentation, and that's, our heroes, our champions, courage and sustainability. And we all need heroes and champions. And sometimes in my life, I haven't had that because we've lost so many of our older people, our elders. And in my family line, we're traditional owners of Birrabay country, Port Macquarie. We were losing a lot of our women, our older women. And, so I looked to feel for other women. And Michelle was one of those women, so I watched her closely. That 2013 experience changed my whole life because I went back to my community and said, what can I do to initiate change? Because boy, did we need it. I looked around in my community, I had a really close look, and us women up there, we didn't have a voice. And how can I create that voice? knowing that I had to build that self-esteem within myself to give me permission to be seen, be heard, to be valued, have a sense of belonging and to feel safe. Because it wasn't, in 2013, it wasn't the space that made me feel that way. It was me, myself. So when I went back, I go, right, I'm going to be a change maker. And every time I doubted myself, this image of Michelle Deschamps would come up. I know. But, you know, it's not what people say, it's how they make you feel. And Michelle made me feel that I could do it, that I could have the courage to do it. So this is a part of, you know, just that little story that when I went home, I went, right, how do I do that? So the short video is about the women and the girls that I worked with after the 2013 Straight Talk program. That was 6 years ago. We have a big story since, you know, we started, and that was our first Pippian Day. We did many Pippian Days separate, but bringing everyone together. We had about 60 women, and we just really realised with the young ones that we didn't give them, they didn't have the opportunity to do that. If you know Port Macquarie, it's Birrabay country in mid-North Coast, and our history is that they had taken the mob off for Port Macquarie land and Guruk in our language, Gathang Language, and moved people to the reserve at Kempsey, Burnt Bridge, my family were moved to, and the reserve at Purfleet. So in the mob here in Port Macquarie, we had little pockets of families. So it was really moving towards bringing all those families together and really started talking about women's business and how that would look. So when we had this bigger conversation, it was about how was that going to look. So 12 women sat together in circle, and we started that 6 years ago, and we're still sitting in circle today. So when you're talking about governance and talking about different models, what we really want to home in on was our traditional principles, practices and values. And how did that look? That we didn't really have a leader because we were all leaders, but we led in different ways. And to value that, whatever we were bringing to that circle as individuals, it was valued. And what can we share around our skills? So today, as I said, we still sit in circle, but we're still working with those three age groups, which is the younger girls, the younger women, and the older women. And what we want to do is put that out, flow it out. We talk about the ripple effect. So we started hosting a women's festival about 3 years ago. And our first festival, we had 300 women. The second, we had just over 500. And the last festival, we had 700 women. And what we wanted to do was show other communities of women that it is achievable, that we can sit together and we can actually support and nurture each other. Because women are so good when we're talking about, you know, pulling you down. There's nothing like a woman to pull you down. So, you know, in that process, we realised that we had to have courage, that we had to actually get up front of people, and we had to have the courage to stay there, knowing that sometimes you'd be judged. So with this women group, they all said, okay, we'll give it a go. And we really, really work on that because it, as I said, it's the ripple effect. If the younger women see us doing it, then they're more willing to get up and give it a go. So this, the Women's Festival, I just want to give that a plug. It's in Port Macquarie, and what we're seeing from a lot of the other Aboriginal women in different communities, they're just loving it. We prepared the space. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a 12-month process to prepare the space so it's culturally safe for all women to step into. That's Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal women, but a majority of the facilitating is done by the younger Aboriginal women. So if you want to check that out, it's Women's Festival 2019, Birrabay Country. Just a little bit of my story and just a recognition of everyone that's in this room. And I just want to end by sharing something with you that my grandson taught me. You're D-E-A-D-L-E. Deadly. You're deadly. You're deadly. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Rhonda. I was really reminded through some of the conversations that you were having about what Dr. Josie Douglas had talked about before, about our governance and our leadership capabilities and the logistical capability that is inherently embedded in our culture. And when we connect to country in the way that you are helping facilitate across all those different generations, it is incredibly powerful. So thank you for that. You also said that something about there's a good woman who can bring you down, but there's also incredible women that can lift us up. And Michelle, I'm so pleased that you got the sing out there from this beautiful woman to another. And if you ever want to see the best ever TED Talk that you will ever see, check out Michelle on the TED Talks. It's just extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary discussion on leadership. Speaking of leaders, this man who I'm about to introduce, I am happily claiming as one of mine from Mer. And you can also read about him, but in the spirit that Rhonda has created for us up here about talking from our heart, I just really want to celebrate this man. He has had an incredible role and a series of responsibilities in a lot of different organisations, absolutely. But the gift that he has, I think, is just for this incredible form of masculinity, one that celebrates our men's ability to care for each other, to bring other men along with them on incredible journeys. And what he did with my son, I will never forget, and I will always hold you in my heart for that. My boy needed structure, and he facilitated it for him through Gridiron. I'll never forget the day he came home with this book about this thick, and he's sitting there and he threw it on the table and went, "Oh my God." I said, "Son, what is that?" He said, "That's the defence book. I have to learn all these plays." But in learning the plays, what he also had to do then was rely on other people in the team, and he had to form the trust that if he did his part well, that they would also do their part well. And this co-facilitation within that group of young men, I think, has stood him in very good stead. So, my brother, please come on up and share with us your incredible story. Give it up for my brother, John.
As much as I love public speaking and I prepare myself well, it's somebody throws a curveball like that and it has me nervous as. Hello everyone, my name is John Rowe, aka JR/Rowie, known by many names. Quick one, if you read the bio in there, it's probably the longest job title that anybody's got in there. So what does that mean? What is my community? Pretty much that's my community right there. So air combat electronic attack, I work for the Department of Defence embedded in Air Force. Pretty much my role is to look after the 35 Super Hornets and Growlers that protect this country and over 300 staff that make it to full capability. So pretty much that's my community there. My job right there is to make all those people talk to each other, so at any point in single time that if somebody makes a phone call, that those jets need to go. So it's completely non-Indigenous related, non-Aboriginal and Torres Strait. I mean, I worked here for 1992, since Indigenous affairs and in a lot of spaces. This is one of my first roles that has nothing to do with blackfellas. But what I find, though, is it's a lot to do with communication that I've learnt, either from my background in professional work or from my community. Also, again, pretty much this is my office right here. So that little room right there, that's my unfortunate view every day. So next time you watch Top Gun. Unfortunately, I'm Charlie, so it's okay. And there's me doing Toyota, oh what a feeling. Just to show you, it's one of the few authorised photos there. How did I get myself there? Basically, I got myself there because we moved here in 83, etc. Went to school at Canberra, Erindale down the road. Got into a lot of things. Joined the public service about 1992 with JP. Ended up sitting next to him for about the next 10 years. That's why there's JP and JR and hashtag John Sandwich for NAIDOC tomorrow night, if you want photos in between. That is, if you want to hashtag John Sandwich right now, it is a thing. Go for it. A lot of space there at ADSIC for so long, met so many great people. ADSIC was disbanded when we didn't know what to do. Got thrown into DUA, went to Indigenous Communications in DUA. 30 people in Indigenous Communications. I was the first black fella. I said, this is going to be bad. Started looking for something else to do. Reached out with my background of media marketing, public speaking. I do voiceovers. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. No, okay. Found out I could do some stuff in the media. Went up to SBS and worked with Carla Grant on Living Black, moving it from Indigenous Culture Affairs magazine to Living Black. Got to do some great time with Philippa at Message Stick and things like that with David Jowsey. Learned a lot there. Missed Canberra a bit. Well, the lady I was married to, she missed me because I was in Sydney, so I had to come back again. Accommodation Services Division, Aboriginal hostels, got to work around that, media marketing, etc. Got headhunted to be head of Indigenous Communications for Centrelink. That's probably one of the worst periods of my life. Now, for those who work with Centrelink, only because of the bureaucratic. Because when you work, Centrelink's 37,000 people, 5,000 blackfellas work for Centrelink. It is by far the biggest organisation that blackfellas work for. And they love working for it. And it's a good thing to work for it. It's the bureaucratic policy and stuff that I hated. Remember at the time, there's 528,000 people that identified as being Indigenous in this country. 219,000 are on Centrelink. Disability, pension, things like that, but that was a lot. The straw that broke the camel's back for me was Indigenous Communications when the intervention came in. And I used to hang around with Mal Bruff a bit because I had to. Once that came in, we learned about a couple of things about walking in two worlds. There's your job you have and where you're from. So I couldn't live with myself working for that organisation again. I've got no problems telling you this because there's been a lot of water under the bridge passed. And basically for me right now is, I'm one of the few guys that I consider I have no shame. I don't care. Everything's positive, everything's good. I love all of you. I'm not religious anyway, it's just you're great human beings. It's just the positivity that I have to you. Had a little bit of a downtime with that, just figuring out what was I going to do. Yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go join ACT Police as the Indigenous Liaison Officer. That was a fun time, basically seeing the lowest of the low of what not just blackfellas can do, but human beings can do. It's no different. It wasn't a matter about the colour of skin, etc. It's bad people are bad people. Tried a couple of things like that, see what we can do to keep them out of jail. So Aboriginal Justice Centre, see how we go with that. What did I learn there about governance? I learnt that for many of us in this room that have had to deal with boards and things like that, there's a big defining difference of people who want to be and can be a board member to who people want to run a company. Some people don't know the difference. Boards say, we're going this way. It's the CEO's job to go, I'll figure out how to get you there. I'll get the petrol in the engine. I'll get the right people around us. A lot of people want to micromanage. Didn't like that at all. Got out of there real quick. What did I do then? Pretty much went back to SBS because they said, can you come back? You did such a great job. Can you come back and help set up a little thing called NITV? We want to get started. A few things like that. Sure. Miss Canberra came back again. What did I decide to do then? Go teach 6-month-old and disabled kids go how to swim. I became a swimming instructor. Nothing better than watch people swim because I didn't want people drowning in the backyard pools. I wasn't going to teach an Ian Thorpe. And what was my style of teaching kids how to swim? Hey, throw them in the water. Swim, come on. They learned to do it. Thank you, John. We love you, John. Here's some presents, John. When you push people to their limit or beyond what they think they can do, that's when you get the best out of them. Then I had the great time to work with people across the road at Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Institute. Ruth, hi. All my people here. Sess. There's nothing better than working for the world's largest collection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander material as your day job. What's the defining moment of it is basically figure out what you love to do and figure out how to get paid for it. And that's the best job in the world. What do you do at lunchtime? I'm going to go read up on my family from Broome. Oh, look, there's words I didn't know. Or here's my TI side. Or here's what they were reading in the Sydney Morning Herald in 1871. It was really about horses and judges. That was about it, really. Once you live here long enough in Canberra, though, it does get to you. Great place to work for money if you're sort of like pushing paper. A little bit of a difference between what I do. I don't touch paper. I don't provide reports. My job now is people. How do I motivate people? How do I get people to what they do when they drive through the front gates, past three checkpoints of security and come to work to make sure those things are good to go? How do I motivate them that it's not just another job? I'm pretty much sure everybody in this room is the same if you work in an Indigenous organisation, is you're pretty much doing it for the people and what they can do and their processes. Left Canberra in 2014 because we've been here for 32 years. It was killing us. So moved to the Gold Coast. Yeah, it was great stuff. Probably one of the best things I did, but unfortunately it meant I had to leave all my friends behind. So I learnt to survive by myself, not involved in the world of 32 years that I've just been in, and you have to make friends. And it's one of the best things I did, but I miss every single one of my friends. Doesn't mean that I love Facebook. It's great. I find out what Otis is doing with his dog and find out what Robin's doing over here and what you're doing. It's good, and that's the new way we stay connected. For me, Lydia's great talk was great. 50,000 years, 55,000 years behind us, that's great. I don't care. I know where I'm from. I know my bloodline. Both my grandparents are gone. I have no parents. I have no brothers and sisters. It is me. But I have 350 bloodline up in Broome. I got 400 in Murray, and I got every single one of you in this room that's the same royalty as I am. So I don't need to worry about the past. What I worry about is tomorrow, 10 years. Think of what's happened in the last, I think we saw it this morning, 250 years. Think about what's happened in the last 100 years, in the last 50 years. I want to influence what's happening in the next 10, the next 50, and the next 100. So what's my legacy I leave these days? Is basically, one of the fun things is I'm the head coach of the Australian Gridiron National Under-19 team. See, I got 3 hats. I got me, I got my work, and I got these fellas. Now, they're not black fellas, that's the Australian team. I got to figure out how to lead, mentor, motivate, do what I need to do to get each one of these people where they want to go. What do they think I want to do? I want to go play in the NFL and earn millions of dollars. I'm not going to tell them no, but we're going to have some real conversations. The last thing I'll leave you with is basically, when you find out who you are, there is an awesome shield that you can put up and protect other people. As I said, I have no shame. I know exactly who I am, where I'm from, where I'm going. And so it wasn't until the lowest of lows that I could actually build myself up. And again, I'll say the word learn not to care, but I've got to find a better way of saying learn not to care. What did I learn about myself? I'm nice. Inspirer, mentorer, networker, influencer, communicator. And the biggest thing I see myself today is I'm an empowerer. It's not about me anymore. If I realistically look at myself, by statistics, I've got 15 years left to live. I'm perfectly healthy. So what am I going to do? What am I going to leave here? And remember, it's not about me. If leadership is about you, that's manipulation. If leadership is about somebody else, that's empowering. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Rowe. I'll be on the panel. Have a cracker of a day.
Too deadly. What I love about your story, John, is that it's obvious to me that you have a set of really strongly embedded principles that you live by, and you also just trust that good things will happen to you because you're a good person. There is no tidy leadership journey that you went on. A lot of it was like, no, this doesn't align with the values that I have anymore. I'm just moving on. I'm going to trust that that's okay. So I'm really pleased that you talked about that leap of faith. Really very important. And this is another man who is also an incredible empowerer, influencer, mentor, who just does things in a very, very strong-minded way and manages to bring so many people along with him on the journey. Now, you don't have his bio, so I will actually just make mention of who this incredible man is. When I was 21, up in the Territory, running the most remote area Aboriginal medical service in Australia, I think at that time, Pinterview Homelands Health Service. That was the first time we met up in a tripartite forum agreement. That was the big negotiations happening during that time. And you have remained steadfast and true to the aspirations of people in the Territory, and you've been internationally inspirational as well as locally. And I think that having that leadership capability to scale across all those different levels, John, you're such a affirming leader, and I'm so pleased to have been able to be influenced by you. But John Patterson is born and bred Territorian, and his family is affiliated with the Roper River region. John graduated from Edith Cowan University with a Bachelor of Social Science and Human Services and is a proud AILC alumni, having completed numerous courses. He was appointed as the Executive Officer of AMSANT in June 2006 and has been working to strengthen and enhance community-controlled health services in the Northern Territory to improve the quality and duration of life for Aboriginal peoples. His long career has taken him across the country working for ADSIC in regional and state manager roles, as well as many other positions, including Senior Advisor for the NT Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, the Acting Director of the Northern Australian Aboriginal Legal Aid Service and the CEO of Wurli Wurrungjang Health Service. John has represented ADSIC at the United Nations Working Group of Indigenous Populations in Geneva and Indigenous Economic Conferences in Canada, and continues to advocate the ongoing success of the Aboriginal community-controlled sector. Can you please join me now in welcoming Mr. John Patterson?
And thanks, my sister Kerry, for that warm introduction. And before I get started, I'd like to thank Glenda for that warm welcome to country, and thank the Ngunnawal people and nation for allowing us to have this very, a positive and listening to some of the great leadership, older ones. I won't say like myself, but I mean, I'm over 60 now, so I don't think I don't feel or I don't think like I'm 60. I still think that I'm still in my 20s and 30s, and that's what keeps me motivated. Get up and smile in the mirror every morning and tell myself I'm going to go out there and have a good day and a positive day in the workforce. It's no good getting up and thinking, oh geez, another day in the office, and going there with a negative attitude and frame of mind. So that's what keeps me going, and I think that's, and we owe that to our leaders past and present, and those that are upcoming, to show and demonstrate that leadership, the positivity of us as peoples of this country. There are some brilliant leaders out there in the sector, and we've just heard from one JR here. We crossed paths back in the ATSIC days with JP, and I'm so proud and thrilled to see where they've come, and breaking out into those non-traditional areas of work, like you say, out of the Indigenous Affairs portfolio. I'm still there, been there for the last 3 decades, decades at least, and it's great to see some of our upcoming leaders now branching out into some of those more non-traditional areas and providing the appropriate leadership there. And I have a daughter in Defence. We've got David Dross's son here in Defence, JR, Normie Grogan, Lieutenant in the Air Force. Really positive and great leaders that are now branching out in some of those other areas. I'd like to thank the AILC and the AIGI for the late invite, but as always, we've come prepared, and participating in this forum today, which is a great thing, and we should have it on are these regular things, yearly things that we get together? Yeah. Yeah, no, look. Well, when you got, people like Michelle and Robin involved, and the leadership around them, I'm sure we can persuade and encourage them that this must be an annual thing. My personal journey, look, I grew up my mum, Aboriginal from the bush. My father, obviously, white fella out of England, Scottish. Born and bred, Mum never worked. We lived in an old Sydney William hut, Howard Springs. I went to school, and I think Mum really influenced that. Thanks. And influenced that because she had this old saying that that if we wanted to be competitive in the workforce and lead a good life when we get older, education was really important, and we needed to get the best education that we possibly could. So I'm the third youngest out of eight of us, and it was through, like I say, the encouragement of my mother to keep me motivated, keep me going to school. I completed year 11 in Darwin High School. Father at 17, 6 kids later, 26 grandkids now, so you can imagine what I do on my spare time, and a bit of a challenge come Christmas time and trying to remember all their names when you're giving out presents. So my oldest granddaughter, I thought she was very smart. She got Pop a T-shirt, and she's got all the kids, those, what they call them, mojo, or, them faces that you can, yeah. So she put all these faces on there with all the names, so I wouldn't forget them. So who was up next right out? Yep, Hunter, Blake, and kids these days, they got all them deadly names, Can't you just call them John and Peter and Paul and Henry, So anyway, I had to leave school at the age of 17, and I had to go out and work because I had to, support a family. So my first job was a garbologist, chasing a rubbish truck around the streets of Darwin back in the day, and I thought, shit, this is no good for me. I've got to, there's other employment out there that are a little bit easier than getting up 5 o'clock in the morning and chasing smelly old garbage trucks around the street. So a phone call came from the Northern Territory Public Service for an interview with the Chief Minister's Department. Successful, ended up at a base grade, AO1 level, all that mundane job in the filing and shuffling papers and giving it to bosses and all that sort of stuff. Worked my way up. An offer came from the Northern Land Council to go and do a bit of a stint over the Land Council. I accepted that while I was there. I was pursuing a football career, played over 213 league games with the mighty Buffaloes Football Club. Life member of the club, life member of the league up there. So I achieved all my goals there, ended up doing a ACL, operated, laying up in Darwin Hospital thinking, where am I going, And I kept doing the self-analysing assessment of myself in terms of what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. And it turned out that I applied for a scholarship back in the day, the old ASPA, I think the Australian Professional Study Awards, I think that the Australian government offered at the time. So I was fortunate enough to be granted one of those and headed off to Edith Cowan University in Perth. 1990, graduated 92 with the Associate Diploma in, the Bachelor of Social Science and Human Service Management. Went back to Darwin, NATSIC was just born, and so I was encouraged to throw my hat in the ring and just to become a regional councillor. And I, exceeded all the votes that you needed to get on the regional council, and then some of the other guys said, look, commissioners, they're looking for commissioners, so why don't you throw your hat in that ring as well? So I did, and I ended up being elected as the ATSIC Commissioner for the NT North Zone, and Coolman J. Perkins was elected as the Commissioner for the Southern Zone. So it was a great experience, those first 3 years, 93 to 96, working in with ATSIC. That's where I come across JP and JR. And a great organisation. It was premature for it to be abolished, and I think Amanda Vanstone now recognises that as a former Minister of the Howard government, and she admitted publicly that it was probably the wrong decision that government did, was to abolish ATSIC. I just want to acknowledge a couple of strong women that support me in my work back home in the Territory, and one of them is Erin Lefat. I want to acknowledge Erin. She started off similar sort of career, admin in Danila Dilba, personal assistant to Pat Anderson, I think at the time, Then went across to Mick Gooder at the old CRC for Aboriginal Health back in those days, and then came to AMSANT where we had an employment WIPO position vacant. So Ez scored that on her own merits, and 12 years later, she's now my manager of programs, one of the biggest areas in the organisation, the biggest budget area. Manages a whole number of units that come under the workforce and all our programs within AMSANT. So, but really good, deadly, young, solid, loyal, And I can just give them instructions and away they go and they'll get the job done. I don't have to watch over their shoulders, you know. So I hope my management and supervisory leadership is all about empowering our managers like Erin and others that are coming through the ranks. The other one I just want to mention is Dr. Josie Douglas. We heard from Josie this morning. In the other capacity of APONT, Josie is probably one of the top negotiators and influential Aboriginal women in the Northern Territory. You know, deputy. You know, I'd see her as the right-hand person for Joe Martin-Judd, the new director of CLC. Negotiated and led the housing agreement, the national partnership around Aboriginal housing in the Northern Territory. And another good, steady, calm, you know, analytical, you know, smart women that we've got coming through the ranks, and there's plenty more of you guys in the room, but I just wanted to acknowledge these two have been a great support for me, and I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge that and thank them for their support and you know, encouragement. And it's not about me, it's about we. That's the approach we take. We're a team, and if we're going to make changes and move on and get positive outcomes for our mob, then we've got to do it together rather than trying to do it on our own. So I'll leave it there and have a glass of water, and happy to make some more comments.
Thank you so much. Okay, panellists, listening to this, we have 10 minutes left. So I'm going to ask just a couple of different questions for you all, and I'm taking into account all of you are working across different generations to set them up for a good future, and that's now part of the legacy work that you all see for yourselves as being able to contribute to through a process of empowerment. I'm wondering if you could share with us then some of those principles that you stand by that have really helped on that leadership journey. Understanding, of course, they come from ancestors, but in fact we are all someone's ancestors 2 to 3 generations down the line. Some of us will need shirts to read out who our... but others will be able to just really do that. And the work that you're doing, Rhonda, with those young girls and giving them the chance to even name who they are together, I think has been really inspirational. If you could just share with us maybe one of your key principles from each of you that has really helped you on your leadership journey, that would be great.
Yeah. I can't actually identify one, but when I talk about those 5 elements that I shared with you, where every time I sit in circle, it doesn't matter the age of the girls that I sit with or the women, we talk about that, because some of these women haven't really been in that conversation before. Some of them haven't sat in a circle. And when we talk about a sharing circle, it's not a yarning circle that we go back and forth, and it's about actually sitting in a circle and holding space for each other. And I felt it was really, really essential that we teach younger women to do that, because there's so much bullying that's going on in our schools and within our families, and sometimes it's handed down from previous generations, you know, family not talking to family, and that was touched on today. It's actually just saying, you know, we are in a safe space, and this is what this safe space is all about. And I believe when I sat with the aunties and we talked about them playing poker and that, they listened to each other. And I think, if nothing else, the message today is that we have to listen to each other. It's not with our ears, with our whole being, and holding that space for that person when they're talking to us.
Thank you.
And we feel each other.
Thank you, Rhonda. For John?
Hello, thank you. One of the best things I've ever heard is don't unteach creativity.
Yeah.
Which was basically, this was a talk, I think, at the Fijian rugby coach was saying. He says, I've got all these players, but if I tried to teach them the Westminster way, they'd play terrible rugby. Why would I want to unteach something they can do behind the back? Just because somebody does something a different way doesn't mean it's wrong. We just have to find out how to empower them or to get best out of them. And the probably other thing is, everyone's heard about that book, Sun Tzu, The Art of War. I call it the Ur-Dur book. He said, fight the enemy where you're not, Ur-Dur. Basically what it means is, for me, it's learn the rules. Whatever space you play in, learn the rules and the guidelines so you know how to bend the hell out of them.
Yeah.
That's the thing I love about playing American football. It says, you must do this. It doesn't tell me how to do it. It just says, I must do this. Doesn't mean I can't go around this way, I can't go around this way. Find out what is the best way that you can do it or empower somebody else to do it.
Thank you, John.
Yep, testing 1, 2. Yep. So, look, some of the principles and values that have guided me and directed me was being a good listener, you know, and listening to my elder colleagues and mentors and coaches such as Kumajay Perkins, David Ross, Kumajay Tillmouth, and many others. You know, Pat Turner, Pat Anderson. You know, I've got a good network of you know, people that and Kerry. You know, I mean, we've had Michelle. You know, starting to have consistent contact with you guys now, and so just listening, picking up bits and pieces, you know, and learning and respect, you know, respecting, and I've always treated people the way how I want people to treat me, you know, and that's you know, being I think you mentioned the word love brother, you know. I mean, I encourage my kids to you know, say more often that they love their parents, you know.
Yep.
That they love Pop, they love Nan, you know. I don't hear that too much in our community, you know. It's you know, I just don't hear a lot of it. So I'm trying to instill that, you know, and bring that, you know, that nurture, that love and caring and respect and, you know, some of those things that we'd like to be, you know, be treated as humans, you know, and equal partners, you know. And I'm dealing with ministers that don't give a shit half the time, you know, and bureaucrats that think they know what's best for our mob, you know. And I've got to be assertive at times and really, you know, push hard and diplomatically, but firm about what, you know, we believe is in the best interest. Needs to be Aboriginal community controlled. Our mob have to own it. They have to lead it. They have to be engaged in the design, the development, monitoring, evaluation, implementing the stuff that's going to impact on our communities that are affecting our mob. So, you know, and you need all these types of skills, and but the most important is that interpersonal skills, you know, and it's about loving and supporting one another rather than putting crap on each other. We cop enough of that from others, you know.
Yep.
But us as a community, we really need to embrace, work together, and, you know, think about our future, you know, our future generation, to see what we can leave them, hopefully a better position that some of us have experienced.
Yeah. I've just got probably time for one more question, and then we will leave it there for now. And this is an important one because all of you have spoken about it. All of us have had incredibly dark days on a leadership journey. There are times there where you just go home and you feel like you've had your guts kicked out of you just one too many times, and you've had a threshold moment and that's it. But all of you have spoken about the importance of creating safety for yourselves and that internal retreat so that you can come back out stronger and more vibrant in your leadership journeys. I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the safe spaces that we need to cultivate for us to be leaders, but to also be vulnerable leaders. Because I think that when we talk about leadership and it's all about the fight rather than love, what we do is leave ourselves in, you know, we promote this idea that we're not vulnerable to these sorts of things, but of course we are. To be vulnerable means to be human. So what kind of places or spaces do you create or cultivate for yourselves as leaders? Where do you go home to? What holds you?
What the Jigan Damban, the Strong Sister movement, promotes is sister be self, and if you can be a strong sister to yourself, then you can be strong sisters to others. So we really advocate self-care. So for me to do that in the community, I've got to be a model of that. And it is extremely difficult when there's so many demands on you. And I didn't step into the leadership space lightly. I knew it would be that way. And once I stepped in the leadership space, I knew it was going to be for life. So at times I really do get drained. But I live in the bush. I live a very, very simple life in the bush with no electricity, no TV, and my music is the birds. So that's what sustains me. But again, the ripple effect, I've let it flow out to others that they need to look after self. And I do anything I can in the community to support that.
Thank you, Rhonda. John?
So you're telling me you missed out on Married at First Sight? It was awesome. It was great. For me, it's a case of, for us in a lot of communities, it's about smoke and cleansing and things like that. For me, it's about fire. And once you get almost burnt to the ground, you realise what you can do and how well you're going to grow up and go forward. And probably 2009 was that year for me, it was so close to probably me not being here that I actually just said, what am I doing? No, let's not go. Let's go. Let's go for it. And every day from then has been the best day of my life, basically. So for two things, is find your space, no matter where it is. For me, I have a great job, but unfortunately I live 90 k's in one direction and an hour and 20 in one direction to get to work. Man, my car is my space. That's where I do my best thinking.
Yeah.
It's on a freeway or going through the mountains. You come up with some great ideas. And just a tip, if you get yourself a new car, you got Android Auto, you press, hey, Google, take a memo. You talk. I come up with pages of stuff. By the time I get to work, it's actually recorded on my phone and it comes up as a Word document.
Wow.
And stuff like that, because you can just blurt ideas, because you have these great ideas going, oh, I should have said that, or I'm going to say this. Find out a way to get into your space from that. And the other one for me is find out how to not give a crap about yourself. And what I mean by that is, I think my partner now is, who's going to the NAIDOC ball tomorrow night? Yeah, cool. You'll see I'm punching way above my weight. Basically, my partner, she's her 3rd year of remission from breast cancer. And basically, once you go through that journey of chemo and drugs and this close, is find that space where it's nothing is about you, it's about somebody else.
Yeah.
So one, find your cone of silence where you can just focus on you. Mine's my car. And find, if you've got cute puppies or friends or whatever, play golf, find another space.
Yeah. 3 for me, my work, and going to work, like I said, wake up in the morning, I'm going to the office, got a deadly team waiting for me to join forces. We're going to, take on the world and get the best outcomes in health and well-being for our mob and the NT there. Secondly, it's a safe space with those people that I talked about, the ones that I seek advice and sound things and bounce things off ideas, and we can have a frank, honest, discussion without it, breaching, Chatham House rules type framework. And the third one is in the last 12 months, a bit like Sister here, going back home, that place where I grew up in Howard Springs, their 5-acre block. Parents are both deceased now, passed on, and we want to keep the block in our family's name, so we've purchased it, and it's, old Sydney William Up still there, This is an old army defence from 1942, they're non-existent anymore. Corrugated iron and steel, and we've just put a couple of air cons in there to just keep the temperature down there. But going back there and talking, exactly, it's the best thing I've ever done was get out of suburbia Darwin. It was driving me mad, the noise, the bloody humbug, and going out bush and relaxing, grandkids come out, and visit. Dogs, we've got pets again, I can talk to the dogs, and give them a cuddle, and when it gets cold, it's 2-dog night, get them to come and keep us warm.
Which dog are you?
Hang on, cold in Darwin.
Yeah.
Let's just put this in perspective.
26, 27.
Freezing,
Any
big
excuse
jumper.
to sleep with them little dogs.
And
here,
it's
I
all
reckon.
you, mob, I mean, it's all knowing that we've got a great population of our mob coming through now at all different levels of expertise, experience, and if we can just harness that now and really we could be a very, very influential group of peoples for our mob.
Okay, well, speaking of influence, I have been given a bit of a nod. We have got time for an audience question. So if someone would like to ask a question, just one question, no commentary before the question, just the question, so we can hear from our amazing panellists again. Anyone got a question that they would like to ask the panellists?
Don't be ashamed.
Really?
No shame.
Hey,
Don't do Google now. Do it later.
Kerry's voice.
Sets it off. Yes, over here then, my sissy.
Hi, my name is Carly Jaya. I'm a Gidinji Badulag and Meriam woman from Far North Queensland. My question is around succession planning for our youth that are coming through the ranks. I don't think we do it well enough, and I just wanted to get your thoughts as to how you are going to pass on that baton to our young ones.
Thank you so much, Carly.
Yeah. What I'm doing as a leader is actually just creating spaces for the young ones to step into. So I'm giving them some sort of a vision what that would look like. So for me, it's just it's what I do. I breathe it. And when we're talking about starting with family, it's I can't talk about my story enough, but my girls have seen the struggles that I've had to go through to get where I am today, and I think that's really role modelling that to my daughters that you can do it. And a lot of my community know my story. When you're born in community, you've the good, the bad, and the ugly. They know it all. So it's it's just as you're living your truth, speak your truth, be your truth. And I think that's what we can do for our young ones.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rhonda. John's again.
I think for me, last year I was appointed as one of the Defence Indigenous Elders. I know what you're saying. I'm too young to be an Indigenous Elder. That's okay. But basically, that was more of an empowerment and knowledge type role. It's not traditional of elder roles. So I think that's what Defence actually sees as someone with my experience actually wanting to know and wanting to help shape what Defence is going to look like in the future in terms of the Indigenous space. Remember, Defence is not about military as well. It's about public servants and contractors and things like. You don't have to go to war to be in Defence. I think it's a very special people that end up going overseas or staying home and doing what they need to do. For me, it's a case of just finding it'd be nothing about me. It'd be their story, and you sort of don't go into the story. What do you want to do with your life? Well, I'm 50. I have no idea what I want to do with my life still. So that's a dumb way to go. Just find out what makes them tick. What do they want to do? What do they enjoy? And sort of shape it around that. It doesn't happen overnight. It's like a Lego building competition. There's little bricks, and they'll form a big picture or a big model of something. And all you can do really is just help people on their journey and not make it about you. It's about them. You can tell them about the landmines and the roadblocks, and it's like snakes and ladders. Sometimes you go up, sometimes you go down. But just prepare the young people for that. It's not going to be all roses.
No.
And in this case of bad things are going to happen. It's how you deal with adversity, but then also celebrating the successes.
Absolutely. And something that Rhonda touched on before, and I'd love you to comment on it, John, but it's the notion of that there is a time for leadership. Like you can try to force something to happen and it doesn't happen because it's not the right time. So, John, we've been part of this whole amazing community-controlled health strategy, which is now 4 decades long. It has cultivated an incredible range of leadership skills, opportunities and the like. How are we doing succession planning in the sectoral responses that are available for all of our mobs?
Yeah. Look, in the Aboriginal community controlled health sector, there's approximately 5,500 employed right across the nation in all the different positions, from clinical to back office, administration, etc. Community workers. Out of that 5,500, we've probably got about 3,500 Indigenous now, and they're providing opportunities from CEOs. I mean, in the Northern Territory, the great majority of our CEOs that run those Aboriginal health clinics are young. Well, there's a range, there's a range, age range between, I think, 35 to 55, 60, some of our CEOs up there, but big focus on the, and I know we don't do it well, and, probably the best at the moment to bring up, mentoring and grooming and encouraging the younger ones to take up more responsibilities. But I hope I'm doing it, and I think Erin is a classic example where whip her and then we just threw her into without the appropriate support and assistance, but into these management role which she picked up and ran with it. Identified that she needed to go and do more study part-time. We're supporting that. So organisations, I think, really need to bite the bullet, because there's a great majority of us now that are at the retirement age, and I'm one of them. And it'll be people like Erin and Josie that'll step up and replace us, in those CEO type positions, on governance, board director type things. And I think these courses now, these are the ones we've really got to pump our mob through this, so that they get a good understanding of what responsibility of a director on boards comes with, the responsibility of being a senior executive or a CEO of an organisation. You know, there's so much, somebody mentioned earlier, the spotlight on our mob. And every time you go and talk to government and mob, they always got this fear that, you know, we can't handle our own business, can't do the job. You know, there's big risk to the Aboriginal organisations. Well, I keep telling them whenever I see them from now on that, you know, the Aboriginal community controlled sector and Aboriginal organisations are probably one of the best governed organisations because we've been there, done that, we've learnt from our mistakes. And I think the great majority of our organisations now can stand up with pride and, you know, integrity and say that, you know, that we can, if we give them the responsibility, to be able to, you know, do the work with our governance structures and our senior leadership in those organisations to deliver those services and programs. Because I tell you what, since the demise of ATSIC, we, in my personal view and opinion, I don't think we've achieved much at all.
Yeah.
Because it's been just stripped away from the Aboriginal leadership, the Aboriginal ownership, the Aboriginal community controlled organisations delivering those services and programs.
John, thank you so much. And to all the panellists this afternoon, thank you so much for your sustained courage and your leadership and your generosity for holding spaces for all of us. And for all of you, if you can please join me now in welcoming and thanking our wonderful panellists.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm not